For today's demo, I'm going to make a Jacob's ladder. It's something that many of you know as a child's toy. It's the stack of several tiles that when you take the top one and turn it roughly, every tile below that then starts cascading and giving you sort of a waterfall pattern to it. Now, I've done several of these. And I've done different sizes, different shapes, actually no, just different sizes, different orientations. And you can see I've got some small ones, some large ones. Most of them in the classic Jacob's ladder has 5 tiles making up the ladder itself. So this one's got exactly 5. You can count them there. But it doesn't have to be 5. It can be any number you want. And so for this one, I actually made it with using 6 tiles. Just to be a little different and see if I could see what happened. And it works just fine. Now, the way you start off is you need to make a set of veneers. You decide how many tiles you want, and you need twice that number of veneers. So here I've got 5 veneers that are going to be on one side of the tile. And then I did a lazy river to run along the back side of the other side of the tile. So I've got this mokimegane with a lazy river pattern on it for the one side. And I'm gonna have to very carefully stack that up and keep track of what I'm doing in order to make sure that everything comes out in a nice, neat, orderly fashion. Otherwise, I won't have the look I'm going for. Now, since there's not much clay involved in most of this demo, I thought I would show you how I made one of the veneers, and it's this one here. That veneer actually started off using some scrap clay from the mokimegane, the lazy river. And what I did was I took that scrap clay, rolled it into a ball, a big chunk of it, warmed it up a little bit in my hands to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Try to get into roughly a round shape. Pick some point that I think is going to give me a nice swirl. We'll try that one right there. Most of you have probably done this. It's simply a bicone bead. You press down and you go in a circle. And just keep rolling around and around in the circle. And it takes quite a few cycles to get this thing to swirl. It doesn't take too many to make a bicone bead, but it does take quite a few to get a swirl bead out of it. You can see it's starting to bicone already. So if I keep going, end up doing this 40 or 50 times, which is really exciting watching. I know, folks, sorry about that. But I just did want to demo this, at least enough of it that you can get the idea how it works. And so let me see how I'm doing here. Okay, I've got a nice bicone shape. I don't have much of a swirl to it. So you have to take my word. If I keep swirling, it will start to swirl and give me this nice swirly pattern. At that point, sorry, something in me just wants to see if I can get it to give me a nice swirl. So we'll try it a few more cycles, see if it'll start at least to begin to give me that nice spiral that it'll often do. Yeah, I can see it a little bit, but it's not much. Anyway, at this point, all I really did was flatten it out. Get it reasonably flat because I've got to run it through the pasta machine. And once I've done that, I'll go over it with my acrylic rod a few times to make sure it's even thinner than it was. I want to get it close to the thickness for the pasta machine. And I want to do this so I don't get a whole lot of distortion when I do it. Because it's kind of a nice pattern. And then I'm going to take it and run through the pasta machine once on the thickest setting of my machine. Now, these tiles I've made on the medium thin, the number 3 setting on my machine, which gives me a tile that's on the order of a or veneer. Sorry, the veneer is done to about a 16th of an inch thick. But realize when I make the tile, I'm going to have 4 of these together. I'll explain that in a few minutes. So with 4 of them together, that whole thing's going to end up a little over 1/4 of an inch thick. So I don't really want a whole lot of extra space there. I'd cut a template out of a sheet of paper for what I wanted my tiles to be. A little close to the edge on this. Once I did that, I could simply go in and, having decided that that's the point I want, because that's what looks really cool, just cut along your template carefully. Not like I'm doing, but do it carefully. You can put that right on the edge so I don't mar the edge again. And cut along that, using that as a guide. So I'm not cutting up against the paper. And when I'm done, I've got another tile. You'll see that should work had I done it correctly. So that's how I made each of the veneers, or some variation that to make each of the veneers that I'm using. Now comes the assembly part. And the assembly is the tricky part, and the one that is actually going to give you the results you're looking for. Now, having said that, I'm going to lay my lazy river out at the very top of my screen here, so that I make sure I get it assembled correctly, since most of the time it doesn't matter, but since I did a mokumigane that kind of runs from one end to the other, this time I really do need to make sure I get it assembled correctly. For the other side of the tiles, I'll be putting my veneers into probably some order about like that. That is not nearly as critical. Now then, in order to get the veneers to stick together in a place for the ribbon, what I did was I took some clay I have. This could be scrap clay. I tend to use gold clay just because I like the way it looks in the middle. Lay one of my veneers on top of that and very carefully cut around the edge of the veneer so that I've got a soft sheet of soft clay, because I've already baked my veneers. I need them to hold their shape. And you'll understand that when I put the ribbons on. So I've got a sheet of soft clay for the backing. Pull that up. Last time I did this, I decided I was going to use a sheet of paper under there. I keep forgetting to do that. So I will demonstrate that in a minute. Put that guy will tamp down. Take my first veneer. Take a sheet of paper and put him there. And take the first veneer from my lazy river and put him on top. And again, I'm going to cut around the edges. I'm pressing down a little bit to make sure he stays where I want him. Put along the edges to make sure it's an exact fit, because I'm trying to hide that sheet of gold. I don't want that. He doesn't need to be seen. I've got that. Take away the excess. I should now be able to pick up my sheet of paper with my lazy river on it, and that's going to work. Now I've got these 2 tiles. I'm going to decide to put that one down, which means this one's going to be face up. Coming back on my sheet of paper. Now at this point, I need 3 ribbons. I've pre-cut these ribbons so that they are the same. They're just a little bit shorter than 2 of my veneers. So you see if I lay a ribbon down there, she comes in just a little bit short of 2 veneers. Because these are the ribbons that are going to hold everything together and control how it moves. So I take one, put him in the middle, right like that. Take another one and put him on the other end, about a 1/2 of an inch in. And as you, it's fair to measure this if you have a need to do that. I'm going to take my lazy river with a gold piece on the back, since it's soft, and I'm going to put it on top. And I want to make sure that I get them exactly lined up. Press down. I'm going to take my acrylic rod and run over that a few times to make sure everything is pressed in place. That is nice and tight, working good. Everything feels like it should. So now I'm going to repeat that process with another veneer for the backing sheet, and a separate and the other veneer for the lazy river. And again, I've got enough clay here. Did I make it wide enough? That's the question. It is not quite wide enough. That's okay. I've got more sheets. Take another sheet of clay, lay them down there on my sheet of paper. Get my veneer on there. That's going to work. Get a veneer on there. And cut along the edges. Part of this gets really boring, but there's just a few minutes of excitement in between the boring sections. Because when we start playing with the ribbons, we've got to make sure they go in exactly in one way and one way only. Otherwise, nothing works. Going the edges, there we go. Got him. Take my backing sheet off. I'm going to press down. Again, I really want that to adhere, and I probably could use a little liquid sculpting there, but I didn't want to do that at this point. That's the back sheet. See, I've got a little bit of a edge issue here, where I didn't quite trim it perfectly. Then I'm going to take this veneer, it's going to go here, and put him on that sheet of gold clay. And like I said, it doesn't have to be gold. It can be black. It can be scrap clay. It just needs to be something that's unbaked to hold the veneers together and hold the ribbon in place at the same time. And so, since I don't often have a lot of scrap clay lying around, I tend to use sheets of gold, because I tend to use sheets of gold for just about everything I do. Okay, I've cut that veneer. And again, I'm going to roll over him with a brayer. And you probably noticed I forgot to cut the 4th side. So we'll cut the 4th side right now. Put that out of the way. Over here. Pick up my sheet of paper with this guy on it. Now, he's got to go here on the lazy river, which means he's got to be that orientation when I'm done. Now, at this point, before I put the next tile together, I need to take my ribbons and lay them across the face of this baked veneer, this baked tile. Because the top and bottom have been baked, the middle hasn't been. So I need to get that guy across and down and tight and in place. And then I can put this guy on top of him like he's supposed to be. Don't worry that the ribbons aren't tight at this point. We will fix that in just a minute. Like right now. So I'm going to take this ribbon and pull him up and over and press him down and push him into the tile, into my soft clay. And then that guy, again, holding those guys down, and take this guy and bring him over, push him into my soft clay. Now this guy, I've got gold veneer on the back, soft gold clay on the back, and I can just put him on top. Not yet, sorry, my mistake. I then need to take 3 more ribbons because I've got to keep these things connected together. I want to get them lined up so that they're pretty much in line with the ribbons that I already have down there. So I press those into the clay, these guys into the clay, so that they would stay when I do this step. And he's trying to crawl away, I can see. So get the spacing right, so that it looks good. And yes, it would be easier if I measured it, but I didn't. Now I can put this guy on top, the unbaked side down, so that I've got unbaked raw clay to raw clay, ribbons in place, press down a little bit. And since I want to run over that with the acrylic rod, since everything is now connected, and you can see my tiles do work together there, I can roll over him with a brayer, my acrylic rod, kind of mash everything down. And I'm going to keep doing this. So I'll take this guy and bring him up and over the top and hold him in place while I take this guy and bring him up and over the top and hold him in place. And to make sure you go straight across there. I'm going to take this guy and bring him up and over the top and hold him in place. And I got myself out of sequence. So what I'm going to do is just set a tile on top of that for now, so everything holds, and make my next set of veneers. Again, sheet of paper, clay, this guy is going to come in. I'm going to set over there. Bring this guy into the picture. Press him down a little bit. I'm going to roll over him this time with a acrylic rod just to make sure he sticks. Cut along the edge. Cut along this edge. Because it is important that you keep these things pretty much the same size. We made a template when I started so that everything would be the same size so that my tiles line up. Take that guy away. A little bit of cleanup work over here. Got ahead of myself. Didn't quite cut all the way through on this side. So we've got that. Now then, I know we got to keep that guy in that orientation. Remember that. And I need to take this guy and put him on the gold, the raw unbaked gold, Roll him in a little bit. And along the edges. Along the edges. Try not to cut your fingers. And there we go. A little bit of cleanup here. I seem to have a problem with that end. A little bit of cleanup. That guy should come off very nicely. Now, you'll notice as I'm going that whatever tile I've got face up, I take a tile from the same side and put him on top. So since my lazy river is down, my lazy river is not going to be in this position, but my other oddly patterned tile will be there. Pull my ribbons up and over the top, trying to keep them spaced correctly. It actually helps if you can look down, you can kind of see how the spacing is. And then I take 3 more ribbons, put them in here, spacing them so they are approximately the same as they were before. The other set that is already there. Pressing down to make sure everything is nice and tight. Well pressed in. It doesn't feel exactly right to me, so I'm going to pop these ribbons up, pull them a little bit to make sure they are tight. If you're careful, you can do that. I tend not to be overly careful. So I don't generally do that. I try to get them tight the first time. Okay, I'm going to assume they're all tight. So I take my other veneer, put him on top, correctly spaced. And I want to roll that guy out again. So I'm going to turn him so that he is down. Because I'm going to take everything where it's down and roll over him, go over him with the acrylic rod. Make sure I get him firm. I can do more than just the one, but it is important that everything ends up tightly together at this point. I'm going to do that again. I'll take another sheet of clay. Okay. I've got these guys made. I'm going to pull the ribbons over the top again, holding them in place. As I do so, no, there is no real order as to which one you do first, which one you do second. It's just a matter of getting all 3 of them over and quasi in position. Now again, I'm doing that lazy river on one side, which has some problems I had not anticipated. And this guy needs to connect up there, so he's got to flip over and go there. And then I can pull him into position. The ribbon is running away, so we'll pull him tight and bring him up over the top, checking to kind of make sure he lines up with the one below him. Again, the same thing here, trying to keep things reasonably well lined up. That ribbon needs to come up and over the top, fit into place there. I'm going to take the other, what? No, sorry, I keep doing that, don't I? I need to take another ribbon, put him here in the middle on this side, one more ribbon. Put him in here on this side, lining him up reasonably well. And one on this side, and they seem to be having somebody slightly out of order, out of position, but I'm going to just leave it that way. Put this guy on top. And making sure I get everything lined up so that all the edges match, are lined up like so. Take him off. Take him off. Lay it out that way. But that guy felt loose. But to this point, I can pull them apart just a touch. Don't want to do that. He's a little loose, but not too bad. So I'm just going to roll over it with my acrylic rod, making sure everything is down and tight and in place. And put it back that way. Now I've got one more, and I, off camera, did the trimming and getting the backing on there. I know you're just dying to watch that, but sorry. Okay, I got to take this ribbon and over the top. And since this is the last, I'm going to take that ribbon over the top, holding him in place, this ribbon over the top, holding him in place. And since this is my last tile, the top tile, I'm not going to lay down a new piece of ribbon. I'll just set that guy on top, bring him into place, snug everybody up like I should be doing. And then I'm just going to take this guy, roll him over the top, press him down into the clay. This guy gets up over the top and pressed down into the clay. Same with this guy, up over the top. Just keeps trying to get loose, so I give him a little bit of an extra tug. Make sure he stays tight, put him in place. Now, like I said, this is the top tile, so he shouldn't, so I don't have the extra 3 ribbons I'm going to put on them. This guy has none on one side. So I just get him lined up like he needs to be. I can press down on that stack, or as I prefer, I can unpack everything and run over him with my acrylic rod. That gives me my 5 tiles. Nice stack of 5 tiles. Now, if I've got everything done correctly, I should be able to just pick this pile, even though they're not baked yet, pick that pile up, and it does hold together. I'm going to do one last trick here. I'm going to unpack everything and just make sure it's all okay. It does unpack. Now, to me, the sides look ugly because they've got bands of different colors in there. So what I really like to do at this point is to take another piece of my gold clay. This time I really do want gold clay because it's going to be on the outside. And take a small piece of gold clay, flatten it out reasonably well, because I'm going to run it through the POS machine on the thinnest setting ultimately. There it goes through on a medium setting. Take it down a couple notches, run it through on a thinner setting. That actually looks like it's going to be about as thin as it's going to go. Back it up just a hair. Put it in there one more time. Get it cleaned up. We need just a little more clay. Let me actually take another piece and run him through. Okay. Now I've got a very thin veneer. What I'm going to do with this guy is to kind of put him around the edges. Now the edges are mostly baked clay at this point. So I'm going to take a little bit of liquid Sculpey. A liquid Sculpey here. Going to put a little bit on this edge. Just to kind of get enough on there, provided I get liquid Sculpey to come out of the container. There we go. There we go. Liquid Sculpey. Come out of the container, put a little bit on the ends there, because it kind of looks nice sometimes. I want it very thin because I don't want it to slip any. So I'm gonna use my finger to get it on there very thin. And once I've done that, the beauty about this is I can get them to stand up by themselves. I'm gonna take my strip of clay and just lay it on there. Like that. If I want it over the edge, I can do that. Press it into my clay and my liquid Sculpey, make sure it's firmly in there. And I can take my blade and just run it along the edge of that baked clay. I'm going to cut it. It doesn't actually go between the tiles. But run along the edge of the baked clay. Trim it about there. Oops, should have trimmed it further up. About there. Yep, okay. That'll give me a nice trim on that. Press it in firmly. Again, make sure it is well adhered. And obviously I'm going to turn it over. Do the same thing on the other side. Then you have the mess I'm about to make. Another strip of clay and run him through on the same setting. Got a strip of clay there. My liquid Sculpey. Just need a new jar of liquid Sculpey. If you want to put it on the inside edge, you can, again, put that thing at about a right angle. Put just a little drop in there, wherever you like it. Use your finger to smooth it out. Get it fairly thin because you don't really want it. If you get it too thick, things are going to slide around. You don't want it sliding around on you. You do that, and then again, I can take this guy, lay him over the top. Doesn't matter how, because I'm going to trim him up in just a second. Get him pressed down there firmly. Pressing him on this edge. I decided to do this edge. I didn't do it the last time, but I'm going to do it this time. Just get an idea of how it's done. So I'm just going to take this guy, just press him into the edge there a little bit with my finger. Turn those guys out so they're balanced. I want to cut him off just a little bit inside, not too far inside. And then trim along the face. Like I say, these are baked veneers, so I should be able to run a blade right along the face carefully. You don't get too aggressive about it. But with a gentle hand, run it along the face. And you should be able to just trim them to nicely meet the face. Start anywhere and come back and clean it up later. And now I've got a nice clean gold edge in that particular tile. Now I'm off camera. I'll go ahead and do that on all 5 of the tiles, so that I've got that nice shiny gold edge on all of them. And then you can actually take this whole thing together, stack them up this way, without the extra clay on top, and bake it in the oven. Since these the top and bottom veneers of every tile have already been baked, they won't stick to each other. And they don't stick to the ribbon and they don't distort. I've done enough of these, I can tell you that. And when it comes out, you will have a fully functional Jacob's ladder. Well, that is today's demo. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And we will be back. We will be back sometime later April, probably the 3rd week in April, 3rd Saturday in April. And I think Alex this time is going to be doing watercolor on polymer clay. See you later. Hope you enjoyed the show.